Welcome to Terrorific, the place where it's perpetually spooky season. I am your host, Brandon O, and I am back to continue guiding you through the Saw franchise, film by film, trap by trap, as we seek to crown the #1 most diabolical trap across the entire series. To recap our current standings, the winner from the first Saw, the Barbed Wire Jungle, was ousted by the winner from Saw 2, the Death Mask, because having to cut out your own eye in order to prevent some spiked contraption from enclosing your dome like a Venus flytrap is quite diabolical. Now, I said it last time, but it bears repeating. I absolutely, unequivocally do not fuck with anything in, near, or around my eyes. That includes scalpels to cut my eye out with and spikes to stab my eye with. What the fuck? I wore glasses for 15 years, and early on in this era, I tried to get contacts. And so when I went to the optometrist, he's doing my exam, and he's trying to put the contacts in. As he approaches my eyes, they reflexively start to close. And this process repeats over and over and over again until the optometrist eventually becomes a little bit frustrated. And he's like, hey, can you stop closing your eyes? And I'm like, bro, I would if I could, but I don't fuck with shit around my eyes. And he said, oh, okay, bet. I'm going to give you some numbing eye drops then. And he did. And so he was able to get the contacts into my eyes that way. But me realizing that I had no desire to put numbing drops in my eyes every single time I wanted to wear some contacts, decided that maybe glasses were the better route for me to take. And so I stuck with glasses, protecting my sweet little eyes, all the way up until last year when I got LASIK, which completely contradicts everything I've said up until this point, but this is not about me. Okay, moving on. In this episode, I'll be analyzing Saw 3, ranking its nasty devices, and boy, are they nasty, from bottom to top to determine if that top contender can knock off our winner from Saw 2, the Death Mask, to continue in the competition to be crowned as the most diabolical trap in the Saw series. Okay, so getting into Saw 3, it was released back in 2006, and it was greenlit immediately after the successful opening weekend of Saw 2. And this time around, Leigh Whannell and James Wan did not have a conflicting project to work on, and so they returned to write the story, with Whannell also writing the screenplay. Additionally, Darren Lynn Bousman returned to direct as well. Now, all three men initially declined to work on this project. However, one of the original producers from the first two films, Greg Hoffman, unexpectedly passed away a few weeks after the release of Saw 2. And so these three guys got together and decided that working on Saw 3 would be a way to honor Greg Hoffman, and they wanted to dedicate the film to him. They shot all the scenes in only 27 days on a budget of $10 million, and worldwide it ended up grossing approximately $165 million, which is an ROI of around 1,650%. Now, while this amount is still substantial, it does continue the trend that we've been seeing film over film of the ROI decreasing, with Saw 1 being over 10,000% and Saw 2 being around 3,700%. However, Saw 3 is the highest grossing film from a dollars perspective in the entire franchise. On Rotten Tomatoes, it currently holds an approval rating of 29% from critics and 71% from audiences, with the critical consensus reading, quote, Saw 3 does little beyond repeating its predecessor's tropes on a gorier level. And that consensus is interesting because Leigh Whannell stated that his primary objective this time around was to write a script that had more emotional weight to it. And he especially wanted to focus on the father-daughter-like relationship between the characters of Jigsaw and Amanda. I'll leave you to formulate your own opinion regarding how successful or unsuccessful Whannell was at accomplishing that objective. But for our purposes, it is now time to get to trapping, so consider this your spoiler alert. By my count, we have 8 traps in Saw 3, vying for the chance to take on the death mask for the opportunity to continue to advance in our competition. So, coming in at number 8, and this is going to be a little inverted, we have our big plot twist, which is Amanda's test. Now, the overarching plot of Saw 3 is that Amanda, who was revealed to be Jigsaw's accomplice, successor, protege, etc., at the end of Saw 2, she has kidnapped a doctor. And this doctor, Dr. Lynn Dinlin, has been tasked with keeping Jigsaw alive by any means necessary, using crude medical equipment provided to her as they are currently holed up in this abandoned facility somewhere. As all this is going on, Jigsaw and Amanda are observing the progress of a different test subject as he makes his way through a series of trials. Fast forward an hour and a half, big plot twist. This dude turns out to be Dr. Dinlin's husband. And so whenever he finally makes his way to where everyone is located, Amanda shoots Lynn, blah, blah, blah. And it's been revealed that this whole thing is actually a test from Jigsaw, because Amanda had been setting up traps for people that were unwinnable, essentially being a murderer, and Jigsaw does not condone murder, and as such, he decides to give Amanda one last chance to prove herself as being worthy of carrying on his mantle as his successor, but she drops the ball and dies. This is our least diabolical trap in Saw 3 because Jigsaw gave Amanda every opportunity to come out of this alive, and she just completely fumbled the bag. I mean, this dude literally told her, hey, Lynn has your life in the palm of her hands. Hey, Lynn is more important than you realize. Hey, just trust me and calm down. But Amanda could not stop herself from feelings of jealousy as she watched Jigsaw in a near-death state confuse Lynn for his specter of a wife and say, I love you. She's like, oh shit, he loves this bitch? How dare he? I'm gonna kill her. Well, bro, just relax a little bit, take a chill pill, and everybody will be okay. But she just could not do that. And she got herself killed. She got Jigsaw killed. She got Lynn killed. She got Jeff supposedly maybe killed. Got Jeff and Lynn's daughter supposedly maybe killed. Like, damn, bro. Just because you thought that this old ass man on his deathbed was trying to push up on this doctor who was forced to save his life or die? Like, at a certain point, there has to be some logic and reasoning that comes into play. But, you know, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. She got. Moving on, number 7. We have Jeff's final test of forgiveness. Now, Jeff has been that test subject going through this series of trials to find a way to forgive people who he feels are responsible for the death of his young son. And during his game, the tape that plays informs Jeff that if he can make it successfully through all these trials, at the end, he will be confronted with the man who is responsible for the loss of his child. Now, as Jeff makes his way to where Jigsaw, Amanda, and Lynn are, as soon as he walks in, he sees Amanda shoot Lynn, and he's like, oh shit, that's my wife. So he shoots Amanda right through the neck. All right, she's toast. Anyway, Jigsaw says, yo, I'm the man responsible for the loss of your child, but if you forgive me for putting you and your family through these heinous games, then you successfully pass your final test, and I can have an ambulance here within 4 minutes to treat your wife, who, most notably, is still alive from this gunshot wound. An ambulance will be here within 4 minutes. But Jeff just can't do it. Picks up a power saw, slices open Jigsaw's throat, and at this point, Jigsaw presses play on the tape recorder that he had been concealing up until now, Tape says that this was an insurance policy. If you're hearing this, then I'm dead, and Jeff, you failed your test. I told you that I am the man responsible for your child, but plot twist, I wasn't referring to your son like you assumed I was. I was actually talking about your daughter, who you and your wife have neglected ever since the loss of your son. And I'm the only person who knows where her current location is, as I've stashed her someplace with a limited air supply. So by killing me, you doom your daughter to death. Also, Jeff now realizes that, hey, my wife was wearing a bomb collar, and hey, that bomb collar was linked to Jigsaw's heart rate monitor, and as he dies, my wife's head explodes, and so now I done really fucked up. That's tough, but wholly avoidable. Now, Jeff fumbled just like Amanda did, but hers was more egregious because she actually knows Jigsaw. She spent all this time with him and still did not trust him. Jigsaw has proved to be a lot of things, but a liar has not been one of those things, and she should have known that better than anyone. At number 6, we have the aforementioned bomb collar or shotgun collar. So Amanda has fitted Dr. Lynn Denlin with this explosive device. It's loaded with like 5 shotgun shells, and it's linked to Jigsaw's heart rate monitor. If he flatlines or if Lynn goes beyond the range of the sensor, the device will detonate and everything above her shoulders will be turned into spaghetti. If this device had been fitted to an average Joe, I think I would have put it higher up in the rankings, but since it was fitted around a doctor, a literal doctor, a trauma doctor, she is used to working in these high pressure, do or die, life or death situations. And so, yes, she encounters some awkward moments, like when Jigsaw starts to seize and almost dies, and when she has to perform brain surgery on him with a power drill and bone saw. Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit dicey, but was she ever really in that much jeopardy? Didn't seem like it to me. And at the end of it all, Jigsaw told Amanda to take the collar off of Lynn, and she refused to do it because she was jealous and she failed her test and all those dominoes fell, etc., etc. But all in all, this trap here, while nerve-wracking, she was the best person to tackle this challenge, therefore decreasing its diabolicality factor somewhat. And now moving into the top 5. At number 5, we have the human popsicle. So in Jeff's first test during his trial of forgiveness, he makes his way to an industrial freezer. And within this freezer is a woman who is completely naked and her hands are chained to the ceiling above her. And so Jeff is tasked with finding a key to use to unlock her chains, and both of them can then escape to a much warmer location. However, turns out that this woman was the only witness to the drunk driving incident that killed Jeff's son, and she refused to testify in trial. And so as a result, the guy who was on trial was given a very lenient sentence. So Jeff is obviously upset. He dilly-dallies for a while, and as he does this, water begins to spray this woman, quickening the rate at which she's becoming hypothermic. And she also starts to freeze. Now, eventually Jeff kind of snaps out of it. It's like, hey, I don't want this lady to die. I'm better than this. So he tries to fish for a key. By the time he retrieves it and comes back to this woman, she is frozen solid and dead. So, tough way to go out. But she did appear to be passed out whenever Jeff first entered the room, and the whole scene only lasted a few minutes. So I'm assuming that from a suffering perspective, she went out relatively quickly. Now, our next contender also went out relatively quickly from a suffering perspective, but crucial difference being he did not have an actual chance to escape or to have someone free him in the same way that the human popsicle did. So our number 4 trap is the classroom chains. Now, this was the opening scene of the film. It was used in promotional material and advanced previews, to be that hook to draw viewers in, which is a bit on the nose because it features a man who has chains hooked to him all over his body, from his arms to his back to his Achilles and even in his mouth. Here's where we get our customary shot of the TV cutting on, showing Billy the puppet and Jigsaw speaking through this puppet, telling our first victim that despite being afforded a life of privilege, he has been in and out of prison his entire life and apparently is more comfortable being in chains than he is being free. And in order to prove that that is not the case, he must free himself from these chains before the bomb that is in the classroom with him explodes after the 1.5 minute timer expires. So once the timer kicks on, he begins this process of painfully ripping out these chains from his body one by one. And it gets down to a few seconds left. All he has is the one in his mouth remaining, but can't get it done. It explodes. He dies. Okay. It's important to note that the police, when they first found the crime scene and tried to enter, the door was welded shut. They had to cut it down. So even if this man was able to get all the chains removed in time, he had no way of escaping the building, so his death was guaranteed. It's never explained exactly what his crime or crimes had been, but with the setting being in the classroom, seems to imply that it was child abuse related. And if that was the case, then it's pretty understandable why someone would not want to afford him the opportunity to escape and survive. But nevertheless, not having that chance, being guaranteed to die, quite diabolical. From a story perspective, this is also the point where the police officers realize that Jigsaw either has an accomplice or accomplices, or a copycat killer is on the loose. And surprisingly, this thought did not occur to them when they first encountered this frail old man whose body was riddled with cancer and who could barely stand, yet somehow had the capabilities to hoist up young, healthy adult people by himself. I mean, I guess we all get there on our own time. At number 3, like something out of some extreme, fucked up version of Fear Factor, we have the pig soup. As our buddy Jeff continues his trial of forgiveness, his second test brings him to a large vat, and at the bottom of this vat, a man is chained by his neck. Now, as Jeff stands above him, realization begins to dawn on him as he plays the tape recording that tells the audience the man at the bottom of this vat is the judge that presided over the case of the drunk driver killing Jeff's son. Now, he sentenced that driver to a very light sentence of only 6 months, and Jeff has never forgiven him for that. As the tape finishes playing, machinery kicks on, and this conveyor belt of rotting pig carcasses overhead starts to come through and drop into this saw/meat grinder, spewing all of those juices into the vat, filling up slowly, threatening to drown the judge in all these disgusting insides. And Jeff is then tasked with freeing him. Now, the key to unlock the judge's restraints can be found in a nearby incinerator. But the catch is that in order to retrieve this key, Jeff must incinerate his son's stuffed animals and toys that he has been holding on to since his untimely demise. Now, one of those stuffed animals is a pig, which ties into this overall motif that's been developing, which I'll touch on in a little bit more detail later on. But with this trap, from a psychological and emotional torture perspective, obviously, it sucks. Like, Jeff is grieving. He's never stopped grieving. He's held on to his son's possessions with the notion that this is all he has left to remember him by. So asking him to destroy these possessions as a means to save the life of a person who Jeff feels is responsible for not bringing his child's killer to justice, I mean, that's a tall task. But surprisingly, Jeff does press the button on the incinerator, and he manages to free the judge before he drowns in the pig soup. And as I now say the phrase pig soup for the third and final time, what the fuck, bro? Like, can you imagine drowning in a combination of chopped up, liquefied, whatever, fucking maggots, dead, rotting pigs, probably your own piss, shit, and vomit, because there's no way you can smell that and not throw up. There's no way you can swallow some of that and probably not immediately get the runs. Like, you have the runs, but I guess it's good that you're in this other brown shit because it all kind of blends in, right? You can just blame it on the pig, bro. Like, nah, I didn't shit myself. Nah, that's not me you're smelling. That's the pigs, bro. I'm good. Like, no, bro. You definitely shit your pants. And it's disgusting. And now we move from disgusting to disturbing for our final two traps in Saw 3. In the number 2 spot, we have the Ribcage Ripper. The Ribcage Ripper was another trap that was rigged and guaranteed the death of its victim. And that victim was Detective Carey. So Detective Carey was in Saw 2. She was Detective Matthews' partner. And clearly this was another act of revenge on Amanda's part. Recall that Detective Matthews was the one who framed Amanda and sent her to prison on phony drug charges, where she ironically then became actually addicted to drugs. And as his partner, it stands to reason that Detective Carey had at least some inkling of what he was doing, if not directly involved herself, but at the very least, Amanda considers her to be guilty by association. As such, when Carey awakens after Amanda has drugged and kidnapped her, she finds herself suspended in the air in a contraption that is hooked into her ribcage. And at this point, the video cuts on and tells her that the beaker in front of her, in which a key has just been placed, has acid in it, and the key will be dissolved within seconds. So, as she begins her quest for freedom, she does not initially reach into the beaker right away. She fumbles and fiddles with the contraption around her body, despite being told that within seconds the key will dissolve. But she spends the first few seconds, more than a few, dilly-dallying with other shit. Okay, fine, whatever. Eventually she comes to understand that she cannot manually remove these hooks that are in her ribcage. So she reaches her hand into the beaker, into that acid, fucks up her hand, but gets the key, unlocks the harness, and when she tries to remove it, realizes that it's still not budging and that the game was rigged from the jump. So she gets her ribcage pulled apart and dies. This here was the trap that broke Jigsaw's back and forced him to put Amanda through her own elaborate test to determine if she was worthy to serve as his successor, which, as we know, she failed, resulting in her own death, Lynn's death, and Jigsaw's death himself. Under most circumstances, this added fallout would have been enough to crown this as the most diabolical trap within this particular movie, and likely would have knocked off several other contenders, but it just happened to take place in the same movie with our winner, our number one most diabolical trap in Saw 3 that was just beyond fucked up. I had no choice but to put it in the top spot, and I am referring to what Jigsaw himself called the rack. The rack was the third test in Jeff's trial of forgiveness right before his final confrontation with Jigsaw, and it featured the man who was directly responsible for the death of Jeff's son due to drunk driving. By this point in the film, we had previously seen Jeff brandishing a pistol within his son's bedroom back at home, rehearsing what he would say and do if he ever came face to face with this man who killed his son. And so now he finds himself in that position and he sees this dude is strapped to some medieval looking device where all four limbs are restrained independently as well as his head. Also in this room is a glass box with a key hanging down from the middle of it. And at the end of this box is a shotgun. And the string is tied to the trigger of the shotgun. So as you pull it, it adds more pressure to the trigger. And once you finally remove the key, the gun is going to fire. And so as Jeff presses play on the tape recorder that he finds in this room, it informs him that if he's willing to shed a little bit of blood in the name of forgiveness, then he can use this key to unlock the restraints on this device and free this drunk driver. However, if he does not, this device, known as the rack, will slowly turn limb by limb, breaking this man's body until it eventually gets to his head and twists that and kills him. Initially, Jeff is resistant. He's fantasized so long about killing this man himself that now that he can witness the dude die, he kind of thinks that's maybe what he wants. But after the first couple snap, crackle, and pops of this man's arms and legs, Jeff is like, you know what? Maybe we can work something else out. And he eventually springs into action, tries to save him, but it's too late. At this point, the rat goes full exorcist on this dude's head and it turns completely around and he is done and dusted. So a few questions. One, was that really necessary? Because it seems like overkill to me. Now, I know he did something completely unacceptable, resulting in the death of an innocent child. However, to have your limbs forcibly made to do a 360 rotation, one by one, on a painfully slow kind of cadence. My second question is, what the fuck? That is horrible. That is diabolical, and I never thought I would say this, but as someone with the fear of objects in, near, or around my eyes, as someone who faced that fear and allowed a laser to slice both of my eyes open and make flaps in them to correct my vision, I guess my perspective has changed because I am taking this trap, the rack, over the death mask as the most diabolical trap within the first 3 Saw films. And it would not surprise me if this becomes the first trap to win multiple rounds of this competition. Because it is a doozy. They turned this man into a living voodoo doll. They made him do some tricks that Gumby would be jealous of. This fool looked like Mr. Fantastic if he discovered BDSM. Like, oh my god. But in closing, Jigsaw's Messiah complex that was established in the first film, but kind of pushed to the back in the second film, returns here in Saw 3. Amanda was handpicked as the one to carry on Jigsaw's legacy, to spread his gospel, if you will, but she veered from this path and became almost a sort of fallen angel. And of course, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not kill. And Jigsaw himself takes this very seriously. He says that he despises murderers, and as such, Amanda is punished for the sin that he feels that she has committed. Additionally, we have the continued and expanded motif of the pig. So in the first film, Jigsaw, whenever he kidnaps someone, wears a dirty-looking pig mask. And then, of course, in Saw 3, we have the trap that features the pig carcasses. And also in that same scene, that same trap, we have the stuffed animal of Jeff's deceased son, which is also a pig. But unlike the other pig appearances up until this point in the franchise, this stuffed animal is in pristine condition. It's very, very clean. And it seems like a fair assumption to make that this juxtaposition was done intentionally. In multiple religious texts, but focusing on the Bible in this specific instance, the pig is viewed as an unclean animal. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7 says, quote, "You will regard the pig as unclean because though it has a cloven hoof divided into two parts, it is not a ruminant." From the cloven hoof, we can draw a line to the devil. From the devil, we can draw a line to hell. And from hell, we can draw a line to the quote, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned," who in this instance would refer to Amanda, the woman hell-bent on revenge against those she feels have wronged her and ruined her life, which runs antithetical to Jigsaw's teachings. Through this lens, we can interpret that the pig is symbolic of human nature and our capacity or tendency to fall into temptation and or sin. So we have the rotting pig carcasses, which could represent a human nature that's so corrupted, so far gone that it's beyond saving, like we see with Jeff, where even though he does save the judge in the scene which we see the pig carcasses, later on his rage, which has just permeated his entire existence so deeply, saturated him with this need for vengeance that he just can't escape it. He ends up killing Jigsaw, Amanda, and also dooming his wife and child to death. And finally, with the pig stuffed animal that belonged to Jeff and Lynn's deceased son, it's clean because his nature as a young child whose life was tragically cut short, it was not yet touched and corrupted by all the vile things that life can bring to people. But we'll stop there for now. And next episode, we'll see how the traps and themes continue to unfold in Saw 4. Thank you for listening. Please be sure to rate, review, and recommend the show to a friend or friends. And remember, always keep it spooky.